Welcome to Ponchatoula Live, the show where we make it easy for you to connect with the people of Ponchatula. I'm your host, Parker Layrisson, and today I've got a local legend as my guest. This is one of my lifelong heroes, one of my father's best friends, somebody I've admired since I was crawling, not even walking. He's a family friend, our family dentist, and just from one of the best families Ponchatoula's ever produced. I bring to you, with no further ado, Dr. Michael Haight, DDS. Dr. Haight, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Parker. I'm quite honored to be here today.
Well, I'm honored to have a guest of your quality. Why don't we kick things off with you sharing a little bit about yourself? Will you tell our viewers, our listeners, tell us about yourself?
Yes. Well, I spent most of my life here in Ponchatoula. We lived on the other side of the railroad track at 163 South 7th Street, which I remember it well. I even crawled around on the floor there as a youngster. I remember that. And I was always enthralled with the fact that the steam engines of the locomotives that would come through will always blow the whistle in the middle of town. I knew not why, but because I was too young to understand that. But I just thought that was one of the happy things that I could wake up to is the sound of those steam horns on the locomotives.
Yeah.
And still today, I enjoy all that. Uh,
I grew up about 2 or 3 blocks north of you of the house you're describing, and I feel the same way. You could hear those, you could hear the railroad tracks clearly, despite being several blocks away. Well, when you were coming up there at that house that would eventually, become your sister's home and stay in the family forever,
yeah.
what was life like as a Haight kid? I mean, what are the things you learned in the Haight household, and what were your parents like as disciplinarians and teachers, and just tell us about your childhood.
Yes, I have two brothers, both of them older than I am, and I have one sister who is 11 years younger, luckily for me, younger than I am. But I did not know growing up as a youngster nor as a teenager that my duties would be specifically to watch out for my sister and take care of her to get her going be available for her anything she needed, and I think I did that well. I I enjoyed all the times when we were in New Orleans. My family was in New Orleans for a period of about 4 years because of my father's work schedule that he had. And this was before the causeway was built, before the interstates were built, and such. So he had to be in New Orleans for his surveying company, and lots of times he was out of time offshore Louisiana surveying drilling rigs and putting them on locations and such like that. So we lived right 1 block off of canals. I mean, 1 block off of the downtown, the railroad track, street car line in New Orleans. And I could always remember as a youngster the ding of the bell of the streetcar when it would stop and pick up people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just part of my life. Then my family, we moved to Ponchatoula. My my grandmother, this
Mm-hmm.
Sadie Sellers, who was uh, Jimmy Sellers' Jimmy Sellers' sister, was living here. Jimmy Sellers had the Oldsmobile distributorship, and we moved up to Ponchatoula to go to. My father and mother wanted to put us in school in Ponchatoula school system. My two brothers, and myself. This was before my sister was born. So we moved up to Ponchatoula, and we were enrolled in school. And I'll remember this always about my first day of going to a new school as a little boy, that I was 10 or 11 years old. My mother brought me to the elementary school in Ponchatoula, which it still is, and she brought me to the principal's office and said, "Here's here's one of my boys. Put him in school." And I was, I was just standing there frozen in front of this man's desk, who I'd never met before in my life, but who was the principal of the school. And this was Will Ed Butler.
Oh, wow.
Was
The
the principal at the
legendary
time.
principal. And from
And he
what my
said,
dad told me, he was a very imposing man, a stern man. It was probably pretty intimidating for a little kid, right?
very, very much so. And he said, "Mrs. Haight, I will take over from here. You can go about your business of the things you have for the days and such, and I will always be here for anything that you need about your son Michael." So that was it. He, my mother left out of the room. He took me by my hand and marched me down the hallway to a classroom of about, there might have been 20 people in the classroom, and he told told the instructor, here's the new boy in school. And of course, being Ponchatoula, everybody started going snicker, snicker, blue, blue, carrying on, like,
Right.
"Oh, okay, Mr. Mike, we'll show him everything to do. We'll show him everything to do." And I was frozen on the floor right then and there.
Uh-huh.
But it, I, uh, I got accustomed to it quite often and made friends.
Yeah.
I did have.
Doctor, do you remember who your first friend was in Ponchatoula, or some of your first friends?
Yes, I do. Yes, there
Yeah,
did.
who was that?
Kenny Bishop,
Oh,
and
cool.
yeah, and then I had cousins, Harry Hungate,
Hmm.
and those were the best ones.
That's
I won't,
great.
I won't count the girls that I knew after a period of about 2 to 3 days. That went quicker. They all want to say, I want the Haight boy to come sit in the chair next to me.
Nice.
That she'd hold up her hand and say, "Mrs. Bishop, there's an empty seat here. Can a Haight boy
Uh-huh.
come sit here?"
So it sounds like Miss Sharon had some early competition there. The girls were after the future Dr. Michael Haight. That's really neat. So, folks, if you just got into the show here, listening or watching, we're here with Dr. Michael Haight, longtime local dentist, been living in Ponchatoula, as he just mentioned, since he was a little child. And it's neat that you went from hearing, the streetcar of New Orleans, from your house there to the whistle of the train here in Ponchatoula. One thinks that if you had moved to San Francisco, you'd be blocks from the trolley and hear that whistle, or bell, had you lived there. But it sounds like Ponchatoula then was a bit like Ponchatoula now, in that it wasn't as immediately inclusive and welcoming as some places. I had lunch yesterday with a friend who's on the Hammond City Council, and we were talking about the difference in cities. Hammond being a college town, their current mayor, probably 2/3 of their city council for the last 20 years have not been native Hammondites or natives of Hammond, because they're so used to people coming in all the time. Every year there's a new freshman class at Southeastern from kids all over a region, whereas Ponchatoula is a bit more insular. If your family wasn't here since the 1890s, maybe people aren't as welcoming. So how did you break in, doctor? How did you start, seeing those walls come down with the boys and go from, Kenny Bishop and a few fast friends to becoming the kind of popular guy that I've known you to be once I came along, you were everybody's friend. How did that transition take place?
Well, we lived at 163 South 7th Street, and my mother made a rule that we had to walk to school. No, she would not drive us in her car, and we had to walk to school, which we did. And my oldest brother was already in high school. My other brother, which is 1 year older than me, he and I would then walk the rest of the blocks to the Ponchatoula Junior High School, and we assimilated ourselves quite well with the community of the students that were there already. The teachers were all wonderful people. I remember them all quite well. My principal was Willard Butler, which everybody knows and knows of him. He was a very strict disciplinarian, and he was quite fair in all that he did and watched over all of his students. We got to walk from our home in Ponchatoula to the football field in Ponchatoula when there was a home football game, and we got to sit either in a stadium or along the fence. Now most of the old men in Ponchatoula at that time, they took up the fence railing along watching the football games, and they had one specific purpose that they did that. That's because all of them had a half pint of liquor in their back pocket, and they didn't want to sit on a hard concrete bench and break that what they brought to the football game. So it was
That's
quite
great.
and for a boy, a young boy too, being at the time I was in the fifth grade at the time. That was hard to figure that out. You know, it was like a given rule. A given rule is don't go up to the chain link fence by the football field. Stay in the stadium and find you a seat on a bench and sit there, but don't go stand at that railing.
I love it.
Every one of those men is going to pull out a half pint of bourbon and start nipping at it. And my mother said, I don't want you around, you know, that kind of people. So
well, based on what my dad's told me, I bet my grandfather was at the fence, not in the stands. But who knows? Doctor, I want to share a quote we've got here because we're on Facebook Live as we speak. We have the ability, Doctor, to bring in quotes from people that are watching us live.
Yeah.
So we've got Norm Piku Jr. That's Coach Norm Piku, the legendary principal and teacher that I went to high school with, not to be confused with his father, who was also a great educator and coach at the high school and college level. But first, hello to Storm and Norman. I hope you're doing well. A former guest on the show. Norm writes, Dr. Haight is the best. He was our dentist forever. So, Doc, what's it like to hear a former patient of yours like Norm come on and just tell the world that you're the best dentist ever? I mean, you know, to hear a leader in the community, a 50-something-year-old man like Norm say that, how does that make you feel after all your years as a professional dentist?
It gives me great comfort to hear that, Parker, and I'll give you an example of that. I had to go to the Social Security office 2 weeks ago for just some minor paperwork things, and when I walked in there, you know, you get a number and all. And when I got my number, I got up, I was doing my things, and the lady that was helping me, I kept looking at her, and I told her, I said, you know, your teeth. You're here at the Social Security office. You should maybe stay here. But I said, your teeth are just beautiful. And she said, yes, Dr. Haight, because you're the one that made all of
them. That's great. I love it. Well, we're going to get into your career in dentistry later in the interview, Doctor. We're talking a bit about your childhood now. But I want our viewers and our listeners to know, if they're watching live, as Norm is, as you can see, folks, we have the ability to communicate by comment here on Facebook. So if you'd like to say hello to Dr. Haight, if you'd like to give him a shout out, if you're a former patient, as Norm and I, are, feel free to do so. Norm, thanks for chiming in, brother. It's always good to hear from you. We're here with Dr. Michael Haight, longtime dentist, recently retired, and he's talking about his childhood in Ponchatoula. Dr. Haight, if you don't mind, let's take a little leap forward in your personal journey. Tell us about the Ponchatoula High School experience. Did Principal Butler move up with you to high school? What was that like? Who were some influential people in your life during high school?
Yes, he was, Parker. And in those times, as you came into your high school years, one of the teachers, either a coach or better yet, the principal, would walk you down the hallway of Ponchatoula High School and put his finger on your locker. That was your locker for the rest of the time that you were at Ponchatoula High School. And
That's
Mr.
really
Will Ed Butler walked me down the hallway and put his finger on locker number 72. And that was my locker for my entire time at Ponchatoula High School.
That's so cool that you can remember that number all these years later. It's if you talk to a student now, Doc, it might amaze you to know they don't even use lockers in most schools.
No, they do not.
I had the privilege to speak at Ponchatoula High School a few months ago, and it was so neat to be back on campus. I went to the new high school on Highway 22, and everybody can tell you it looks smaller when you return, and things are different, but much is the same. But the teacher, who was a former classmate of mine, pointed at the lockers and said, "Hey, you realize we don't use these anymore? They don't have to carry books around. They've got everything in the computer in their backpack."
Yeah.
So anyway, it was just really neat. But so it's great. So you're there with Dr. Butler, who you've probably heard my dad tell the story about the time he got called into to Principal Butler's office, and he was in trouble from senior skip day, and he was unloading himself, confessing to all the various crimes, so to speak, that they committed on senior skip day. And Dad said for all the years he'd gone to school, it was the first time he saw Principal Butler smile. And Dad kind of paused, and the principal said, "Well, Layrisson, I called you in here to tell you you're the high school salutatorian, but now I'm not sure you're going to graduate." So, you mentioned what a strict disciplinarian he was, and that's proof of that. What about other teachers there? Were there coaches, teachers? Who had an impact on you in high school, even if it was just a friend or classmate? But when you think back about those days, who comes to mind and just makes you want to smile and brightens your day?
My English teacher was Mrs. Bishop, who lived where I am in your office right here. She lived 2 blocks north up the street, and she would walk to the high school. Mrs. Bishop was my English teacher, and a wonderful lady. Wonderful, taught me a tremendous amount and watched over me. Will Ed Butler, of course, was the principal at the time, and the faculty was very, very, very kind to their students, very, very kind whatsoever, and discipline was talked about at assemblies in the auditorium of Ponchatoula High School, and it comprised of in my memory, it comprised of about 3 or 4 minutes of talking. There were not any, "Don't do this, you cannot do that, you must do this." It was just, "Do not make mistakes." And
I love it.
Go to your classroom now and make good grades.
Well, did you know at the high school level that you wanted to go into medicine and particularly dentistry, or were you still unclear about what the future held at that time?
I was unclear at the time because my father was teaching me. He was a land surveyor and and worked all over South Louisiana and in the Gulf of Mexico. And he took, in the summertime, he took me everywhere with him and showed me all the things. And I thought, well, I don't really want to do that because I cannot do the math without making mistakes. So I want to do something, something else. And then my two brothers were already enrolled in LSU in Baton Rouge. So I said, well, I'll just ride with them. I'll go over there to Baton Rouge and get involved in all of that. I then made friends with many other people over there who were going to be enrolled in dental school. And now at the time, there was only one dental school in Louisiana, and that was at Loyola University. Had the dental.
Well, can you help me picture the timeline here, Doctor? About when did you leave high school and go to LSU? What?
Let's see.
Your graduation year?
Yeah, it would be right after my graduation year from Ponchatoula High School. Yeah.
Okay.
So it would have.
So there's no LSU School of Dentistry in New Orleans yet. There's just Loyola.
No, there was
public dental school. I never knew that until now.
No, it was the dental school was functioned by the Jesuits, and it was Loyola. It was Loyola of the South, and the dental school was theirs and theirs only. No other university involved in that. And it was on St. Charles Avenue in New Orleans, and it was quite an experience. The entry exam to it was extremely difficult because when I went to sit for the entry exam, well, they told us ahead of time the class is going to only be 45 people, male and female, 45 people. So, and I got down to, my mother took me down to New Orleans to get me enrolled in that. I mean, to get me in a position line to take the examination. When I walked in the auditorium, there was about 80 to 100 people that were sitting there to take the exam. And I thought, I'm stunk. I'm not in. I'm not in. However, I did very well. Got accepted to that and made great grades in dentistry, and graduated from Loyola of the South, and then came to practice dentistry.
But doctor, before we get into your career in dentistry, let me ask you a few questions about school, because you piqued my curiosity when you mentioned women and men. Were there many women in your class? Because I know in that era, for example, law school, my professional school, had very few women.
Yeah.
But were there a lot of women in the dental school when you went to Loyola?
No, Parker, there were not. There was out of a class of 46 or 47, there was only 7 women.
Wow. So yeah, so that sounds similar to law. And now, if you go to LSU Law School, and I was, fortunate to be there this week as a member of the Alumni Board of Trustees, and I've learned that there are more women than men in the class. It's close, but they have passed us up. So it's wild how the world has changed. If you would, Doc, give me some comparisons of what life was like at LSU as an undergraduate and Loyola as a dental student. I'm sure it was a stark contrast socially, academically, etc. But when you think back about those two chapters in your life, what comes to mind is similarities and differences?
LSU was strict in its own way, as far as if you lived on the campus in a dormitory. You had proctors that were on every floor of the dormitories, and they all had to fill out reports on any student that seemed to do something that was uncalled for. So, and then you were sent higher up the ladder of discipline, uh, and which I never was, by the way. Yeah.
I
Now,
wouldn't doubt it. You know, Doc, in my observation as the son of one of your friends, it's not been you as the guy getting in trouble over the years. You've always been the good friend of the guy who got in trouble. You're more likely to be the guy picking up the rascal from jail, you know, the next day than to be the guy stuck in jail overnight. So it sounds like you were the same way as a student.
yes, yes. Uh, Now, at Loyola University, things were very, very strict in there. There were rules for everything. I mean, there were rules in the hallways. There was even a rule of what side of the wall that you could walk along to get to your next classroom. And
Wow.
if you lived in the dormitories, where you had to be in the cafeteria, what time you had to be. Uh, I did live in the dormitories for one semester, and I already made friends with two other people that had rooms in the Loyola dormitories. So then I was in that part. I did not have an apartment anywhere.
Mhm.
So, and each dormitory had proctors, which were assigned to check on every student that was assigned a bed, every student that was assigned a locker. The proctors would check on them every single day
Every
to make
day.
sure things were going as they were supposed to. And
Mhm.
they would report that back to the central office. So Loyola University was extremely strict, very, very strict.
Yeah, those Jesuits are known for their discipline. I want to share with you, Doc, if you don't mind, another comment that's come through
Yeah,
from somebody who's very special to you and me, and that is Allison Hungate, your wonderful former dental assistant. Forgive me, I'm having trouble talking. Allison, I miss you. You were so delightful. Every time I would see you at the office was always a pleasure. And anyway, she says here, Doc, two great gentlemen, and she sends a big heart full of love your way. So it's neat that she's watching you in real time. It never occurred to me, Doc, until you mentioned earlier in this interview having cousins that were Hungates and Allison being a Hungate, that maybe you guys are somehow related.
yeah.
Allison says she misses us too, by the way. But that's neat. What a small world. Allison, thank you for tuning in. You know, it's been very important to me to try to get Dr. Haight on this show for a while because he is such a big deal around here, such a dear friend of many folks like my dad, and such a professional that's so widely respected. So, Doc, we've been talking about, you know, dental school at Loyola, the strictness of the Jesuits.
Yeah.
Let's get into your career if you don't mind, because your career spanned many decades. And I can tell folks, you know, as your patient, that you were delivering on high quality to the very end. I mean, you know, I miss you. I like my new dentist fine. He's great, nice team, but nobody's bringing it like you and Allison in the good old days. But you know, what was that like? To bring us through the journey from young dentist to, you know, entrepreneur essentially because you own your own practice for
Yeah.
many years to, you know, someone who finally decides, hey, it's time I'm going to retire and go spend more time with Miss Sharon. What's a career like, if you don't mind? Walk us through what it's like being a dentist, you know, and what your career was like.
It's it's self dedication. One has to absolutely say, yes, I'm going to make this a part of my life. I'm not going to go out and get another job. I don't want to be a pilot. I don't want to go offshore Louisiana. I don't want to go to another state. You just have to say, I've been trained at the dental school in New Orleans. I can do that well, and I wish to continue to do that and do that today. For instance, I had to go to the Social Security office last week, and I went in there and waited my turn. They called my number to get up to the window. They got there, and a nice clerk lady took my things to duplicate one of my pieces of paper, and I remarked to her, I said, you know, your teeth are absolutely perfect. And I said, there's nobody in this whole room that has perfect teeth like it. She said, that's because you made all of mine.
Well, you must have made so many people's smiles brighter, both literally and figuratively over the years. What was it like? What's a day in the life of a dentist like? I mean, can you give us a feel for, clearly you made that woman's life better. She's telling you about it in the Social Security line. But from your perspective, is it an early to rise, grind? Is it, because there may be kids, like, for example, my best friend, Will Richardson, his daughter, Annabelle, is in her senior year at Southeastern. She's the head of the pre-dental society, whatever that club's called, but she wants to be a dentist. And if she were watching, or other kids like her, what would you tell them to expect, what it's going to be like day to day, in that career?
She must have the courage to tell herself each morning she's up is, yes, I'm going to do good at this. I will not back away from any part of the things to learn and make myself better. And I will stick with it all the way to the end. I will dedicate myself to the 4 years that it takes to get a degree in dentistry. And I know that I have the ability to do it because I've done it in school, in my school years, coming up all the way through junior high and high school. And I know I can do it, and she will be successful.
Yeah. That's great advice. So you clearly loved your job. I mean, when I would go in there, you always have a smile on your face. What was it you loved about it? When you think back over your career, what did you love the most?
Well, one thing that I could come in there and put on a bow tie and nobody would giggle. And nobody would make fun of me because I'd stand there. We had one mirror in the dental laboratory where there was a mirror so patients could get up and look at their teeth after I finished. And I'd walk in the room in the morning for first patient. I'd stand in front of the mirror and I'd tie my bow tie in front of that. And then say, all right, now we're ready to do dentistry.
Yeah.
I have on a bow tie. I have on a white clinic jacket, and I'm going to do my best to make you comfortable with all the things that you need for your.
I'm so glad you mentioned that aspect of the job because, it wasn't until here, when you retired and I got a new dentist who I'm perfectly happy with, no complaints. But it wasn't until I got a new dentist that I think I fully appreciated how singularly great you were at comforting us patients because, we're sitting in there, hey, cleaning's one thing, a checkup every 6 months, one thing. But when you go in there for something new, your first cavity, your first root canal, your first crown bridge, whatever, you had a way of constantly updating us throughout the procedure to know what you're doing, to know what to expect, to kind of explain why, to anticipate questions we might ask. But all of these things you did would comfort us so that we would realize this is normal. This is not going to go on forever. It might be uncomfortable, but it's going to end soon. I just want to say thank you because I took that for granted, I guess, when I was your patient, and you were fantastic at that. And I've got another quote here, or comment rather. Allison is back up. And I want to read this to you, Doctor. She says, I was with Dr. Haight for more than 20 plus years and not one regret. Many patients will say the same. He had great schooling and trained us so well. His heart was designed for dentistry, and I truly believe it will always be his true love. And ask him who tied his bow ties. Let
This
me
is
guess.
a,
It was straight. Allison did it. If it looked a little Kagu, that might have been the doc. That's neat. Another comment that's coming here from Lynette Andrews, and Lynette, thank you, and Allison for commenting on the show. She says that you're the best dentist, and hey, no argument here. We're proud that Ponchatoula produced Dr. Haight, so widely regarded as the best dentist. You know, Dr. Haight, I promised you I'd be respectful of your time, and we've gone a few minutes past the half-hour mark, so we need to be landing the plane soon. But before we kind of say goodbye to our friends and others on the show, you know, I want to take a little diversion back out of your professional life in dentistry and ask about, you know, the wind beneath your wings, so to speak, or the woman behind the great man, and that is your wife, Miss Sharon.
yeah.
To the extent you're comfortable sharing with us, you know, tell us a little bit about that love story, how y'all met, and what she's meant to you over these years.
Yeah. Sharon, her career was a school teacher,
Mm-hmm.
and she started in the Ponchatoula system, and she stuck with that, and she enjoyed it tremendously. She taught many students from junior high all the way through high school, and she's still in touch with a lot of them, a lot of those. And that whole group of Ponchatoula High School educators was phenomenal. They are all
Yeah.
wonderful, wonderful people. Uh, I've been in university areas and classrooms and to courses and such like that, and where some of it is just mass pandemonium. You know, you cannot
Yeah.
you think of why did I register myself for this? You know, I should have just stayed home.
Yeah.
But Allison's a wonderful, wonderful person, and all. She did great. She worked for me so many years.
Yeah, I know Allison's great, and I appreciate you sharing all that with me. Doc, before we go, is there anything else on your mind, anything on your heart, anything at all you want to share with our listeners and our viewers?
As far as dentistry or for us,
Or anything at all? I just want to make sure you feel like you got to say what you want to say here today, because the whole reason I do this show is to kind of share with the people of Ponchatoula the stories of the great ones. You know, I did this because I thought, hey, I see my dad's friends, I see my mom's friends, and
yeah,
I see my own friends, and I don't know, they won't be here forever. And so, for a brief moment in time, maybe 30 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever it takes, I love to get people in here to share your story. I do my best to guide it where, you know, I
yeah,
think people may be interested. But what I'm really asking about now, Doc, is what's on your heart or your mind that you want to share. And we can talk about anything under the sun, dentistry, life, you name it.
yeah.
But you know, with the last few minutes we have here, I just like it to be more about what's on your mind than what's on mine.
I thank you for all of this, Parker. I greatly appreciate that. Let me tell you one little episode. This has nothing to do with dentistry. Uh, as a hobby, I raised Catahoula dogs and Rottweiler dogs, and I advertised them not in the local papers. I advertised them in New Orleans and Baton Rouge, and in other states. And I had people come from mostly New Orleans that would buy my puppies out of the litter. And I had one big female uh, Catahoula cur that a man from New Orleans he was set over there. He said, "I'll pay you anything for that. Yeah, can I have that dog? Can I have it?" And I said, "You cannot breed her to anything but another Catahoula." He said, I promise you that." So I sold that dog to that man, and in about 2 weeks later, that dog, this man lived in Kenner. And 2 weeks later, that dog was back in my garage trying to get into his kennel box and lay down and go back to sleep. I opened the gate and he went
That's
right
cool.
in. I didn't even bother to close the gate. He just stayed there and he thought, well, I'm back home. I got it made. And I'm back. I didn't even call the man to tell him I had a dog.
That's great. Now, hey, if the dog worked that hard to get back to you, it deserved to be
Yeah.
with you at home. It just begs the question: did the dog walk the tracks, take the highway, or swim across
That's
the
what
lake?
everybody asks is, how did he get across past Manshot? I do not know. I really do
Yeah.
not know.
Wow, good. Well, you trained a heck of a dog. That's a heck of a story. We've got one more comment here I want to share before we kind of land the plane, so to speak. And that's from Miss Nancy Duvick. Nancy, thank you for sharing this. She says she's happy to tune in and find Dr. Haight on today. Dr. Haight gave Nancy her first job when she moved to Hammond in 1981. Dr. Haight was a great boss, and we had some great patients. And she says it's good seeing you. So that's really neat to have a little reunion here on the show, Doc. There's Nancy saying hello after all these years. Thank you, Nancy, for sharing that. And I'm sorry, Doc, go ahead.
I thank Nancy for making those comments too. I greatly appreciate all of that. Yes. Yes.
Well, Dr. Haight, I just want to thank you for coming on the show. And I want to tell you, straight to your face, how much I look up to you and admire you. You are both, an academic, and a professional, obviously, but you're also just a genuinely good-hearted, kind man. You're always somebody that I admire. You're, obviously with the bow tie, you're always dressed well. You're well mannered. I mean, I see you at church opening the door for little old ladies and just doing the kind of thing that my mom would want me to do if I were, in your shoes. Clearly your parents raised you right. And so I just want to say thank you for setting an example for the folks in my generation, for being such a great friend to my dad, for being such a great doctor to my dad. I mean, to Allison and Nancy and all of you that have come on the show here, y'all all took such great care of us Layrisson kids when we were little back in the 80s, Nancy. Yeah. My dad through the years, who's now 84, and myself, up to the point of retirement. So thank you all. And to the listeners and viewers of our show who have stuck with us here to the end, I say thank you to you. And we'll say goodbye now, and we'll be back same time next week. Y'all take care.